You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello and welcome to Garibaldi Red, Nottingham Forest podcast, Nottinghamshire Live. My name is Matt Davis and we have witnessed the first game and old problems have arguably resurfaced as Nottingham Forest were beaten 2-1 by Coventry City to a 97th minute goal yesterday. So to discuss all that and look forward to the next few weeks of transfer-wise and upcoming games, I'm joined by Reds reporter Sarah Clapson. Hello Sarah, how are you?
Hello, I'm okay, Matt. How are you?
Well, I started last week with a personal calamity, so I'll start this week. As I was saying before we start recording, I took my kids to their holiday club today, and the woman opened the door looking confused because holiday club doesn't start till tomorrow. So if my kids are milling around in the background here, it's because of my personal incompetence as normal.
Everybody thinks you're intelligent, Matt. They really do.
I don't think anyone thinks I'm intelligent. And the voice you heard there, returning to the podcast, of course, is Reds legend Garry Birtles. Gary, good morning. Are you well?
Good morning. Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Good. Right, where shall we start? Sarah, well, I'm not going to ask what the positives were because there was an easy first question. What did you make of it overall? And then we'll break down into the talking points.
Yeah, it was a bit same old really. Same as last season. Forest, I thought in the first half looked okay. There were some bright moments, some positive moments, scored the goal, got ahead. Second half, they lost their way, took their foot off the pedal. Coventry started to turn the screw. Forest ran out of steam and the equaliser, you could see it coming, and then there was only going to be one winner after that. And I think on balance, you'd probably have to say that it was the right result, that Coventry deserved to win it. I think that there are some mitigating factors for Forest. Chris Hughton explained afterwards the difficult build-up they've had. It's not an excuse, but it's something that has affected them. And they were without Lewis Grabban and Joe Worrell, which wasn't great. They then lost Loicon Beso early in the first half to add to all of that. Tobias Figueiredo came on and he's not really featured in pre-season because he's had an injury of his own. So that there are circumstances there, but having gone 1-0 up, Forest should have killed the game off. They didn't do that. They invited the pressure on and they ended up losing it.
What's your biggest gripe, Gary? Was it not going for the second goal and reverting to some very disappointing old habits of not being able to kill games off?
Well, before I say anything, the staggering fact that I saw yesterday were the stats that Sky Sports gave out about Forest last season. I'll read them out. You've probably already heard them. Goals scored, 37, next to worst in the league. Shot conversion rate, 24th, worst in the league. Shooting accuracy, 24th, worst in the league. And shots on target, 22nd, second worst in the league. Opposition box touches, 21st. Those stats are absolutely astounding. And that is why you'll never get promotion or anywhere near it, because you can't do it. It's impossible when those stats hit you in the face. And it did seem again, like Sarah said, same old. Yes, we got in front again. And you thought, right, let's just go for it. Let's just go and kill the game off, because no disrespect to Coventry, they looked an average side, but then we made them look a possibly good side in the second half. And the fact that we played Colback and Yates in the same side against Coventry City, it just staggers me. There were bright sparks. Myton, Brennan Johnson, absolutely great to watch them. They made things happen. But you can't count on two young kids to do that when you're losing games, because that's not fair. So it was a worrying first game, and it's a very tough league this season, without a doubt, with the teams that have come down from the Premier League.
I'll pick up on something you said there. One of the things we talked about, I sent you in the talking points before, was about Yates and Colback. I don't have such a problem with them playing together particularly, but does Yates have to fulfill more of a box-to-box role at least? And because you can't just leave four players to do all the attacking, can you?
You're losing one man. You're just losing one man. You've got two in front of the back four protecting, and if they stay protecting, you're going to be overrun further up the pitch. And the distribution going forward at times wasn't particularly good. Bong, for me, he gave the ball away too much. He was hitting the ball long. It was being overran. And having said that, I've got a bit of sympathy for him because he'd only got one player to hit, and that's Lyle Taylor. And with all due respect, he's not the best in the air. He tries, he'll back in and try and make it difficult. But the number of times it was given away in that situation, and that puts pressure on you again. And then when you start dropping deep and trying to hang on to a 1-0 lead, you drop deeper and deeper. You encourage opposition on. And like Sarah said, it was inevitable in the end. And what disappointed me about the winner is Samba, he made a terrific save initially. Then nobody reacted from his save. Then the ball got deflected again, and nobody reacted to that. And that's why McFadden scored. Because there were two reactions that could have happened, because there are a lot of red shirts around that particular area. And that was a disappointment for me. It's switching off. It's losing concentration. And that's the two words, you have to have at any level. If you lose those, that's what happens. There was no reaction after the save. And then it looked like it was the goalkeeper's fault that the ball went over the line. It wasn't. It was the people in front of him should have dealt with it better after he made that great save.
Right, let's go back to the beginning and work through it all then. The team news, Sarah. How long's Worrell out for and how long's Grabban out for, do you know?
They're hoping that Joe Worrell won't be too long. It's not the hope a serious injury. They didn't want to put any kind of timeline on it, but hopefully it won't be too long. Lewis Grabban's self-isolating. He's one of the players that have been affected in the number of coronavirus cases that Forest had in the camp. I think they're hopeful that he might be involved at the weekend. But if I was Chris Hughton, if I'm picking my team for the midweek League Cup clash, I wouldn't risk any of the senior players, particularly if I could help it. There's some that might need fitness, but I wouldn't. He doesn't have too many options. That's his problem, really, for that game. But you ideally want to save most of your first 11 for Saturday for the league game, rather than risking them in the League Cup. But to an extent, his hands forced a little bit. I suspect we'll probably see quite a few young players in that game because the strength in depth isn't really there.
So of the players that came in then, Garry, I suppose Mbeso was probably going to start at left back, but he was pushed into the centre. You mentioned Bong a bit already. What did you make of that back four, and how do you think Mbeso, and a bit more on Bong, how did they do?
Well, I've already said, Bong didn't do it for me at all. I think his distribution was lacking. He was partly his fault, I think, for one of the goals. O'Hare for Coventry was absolutely superb. That's what you want to see. He was a constant thorn in Forest's side. He made things happen. He wanted to make things happen. He was creating things for other people all the time. And they always seem to have bodies in the box. And that's why they won the game in the end, because there were bodies in the box. I think you've got to put it into perspective, the centre half. McKenna and Worrell last season were, tremendous. We were one of the best defensively last season in the league, which is fantastic. Chris is brilliant at that. But you have to get the other side of it right. You can't have just that. Say, we're great defensively, because that don't get you anywhere. It might just save you from relegation because you're not conceding, as many goals as everybody else. But you ain't going to get in contention because you're just not scoring goals. Like I said, 37 goals. Was it Derby last season were worse than Forest for goals? That had to change. I think everybody at the end of last season said, right, yes, great defensively. If we get somebody in who's scoring goals, then, we might have half a chance next season. And we fully expected that might happen. I thought they might go for, was it Lucas João at Reading? Scored 25 goals last season, didn't get promoted. Go and try and get somebody who's there. He's a big lad. He's a target. He'll score goals. He's a handful. That was one I thought they might go for, because it's Nottingham Forest we're talking about. And they've still got that draw of, people wanting to come to a club like Nottingham Forest, because, as I said, the owner's done, put so much money in. He's invested so much money. And we were talking about lacking in depth of the squad. We weren't talking about that last season. We're saying we've got the biggest squad in the league by a country mile. We had about 40 players, didn't we, last season? So where have all the players gone? I know we've lost somebody, some of them, but you're going back to the COVID thing. A lot of other clubs, had problems as well with injuries and the like. And you get through it. I went to see Mansfield on Saturday against Bristol Rovers, and you know, the atmosphere was brilliant, the crowd back in, but you know, you watch the commitment and, you know, players getting forward and joining in and the creation that was going on. It was a pleasure to watch. You know, both teams are at it for the 90 minutes, and you just want to see Forest be a little bit more positive in that final third, because whoever plays up front is going to struggle, whether it's Graben, whether it's Taylor, because they're not getting enough support. You've already mentioned the fact that Colback and Yates hang back. I want to see somebody going past people. I mean, it just showed what is possible with the goal. You know, that run down the right-hand side was absolutely...
What's your
got Gary?
I've
got Gary Mills trying. I've got Gary Mills trying to phone me.
Tell him to wait.
Yeah, dear, typical of Millsy that is. I don't hear from him for ages, and then he phones me.
What time?
Yeah. So I know, absolute certainty. So yeah, it's a worrying start. It's only the first game of the season, you know, but we've got a tough one coming up this coming Saturday. And you know, you mentioned in Coventry on the game yesterday that they lost the first 5 games under Lamouchi. And if you do that again, you can't keep recovering from those sort of starts, you know, because players will think, oh, here we go again. And it's the same lot of players who are there. There are no new ones in there, or very few. And if that happens again, you can just see them getting stuck down there. You know, last season we got Garner, you know, was absolutely fantastic. And, you know, we haven't got anybody at the moment. We just hope something happens in the transfer market and we can all be lifted by that.
Would you have done anything different with O'Hare? If you got 2 holding midfielders, would you have man-marked him or something? He kept finding his pockets of space when in theory probably shouldn't really have been able to. He's obviously a very intelligent player, but could Forest have nullified him a bit better?
For me, he's the epitome of how the game should be played. You know, he's not frightened. He's not scared. He believes in his own ability. He'll just go and hurt you wherever he can. And the number of fouls that were given, you know, against us for fouls on him, just tell you that, you know, it's difficult to stop. I think you've got to have the belief that you're better than the opposition. That's what we were always given when we played. You know, right, okay, respect your opposition, but you're better than them. So you go and do it and let them worry about you. Not us worry about them. Yeah, respect them, but, you know, you get on the front foot. Let O'Hare chase you back. You know, don't let him dictate, you know, what's going on the pitch. Although, you know, I watched him closely, and I've got to say, you know, everything they're saying about him is right. He's got a lot of ability, and yeah, he caused us problems all the way through.
Sarah, it was the first game back in front of fans, and obviously for Coventry, it's been a few years away anyway. They've been playing at St Andrews. What was the atmosphere like, and what difference do you think it made to each team? I mean, it must have done Coventry a favour without giving Forest extra excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it did make a big difference for Coventry. The atmosphere was brilliant. I really enjoyed that side of it. It was great to have fans back anyway, but just from both sets of fans at different points, it was just great. They were both so loud. Coventry, their fans really got behind them in the second half, and they helped push them on. It gave them so much encouragement, and they really started to ramp up the atmosphere. Forest fans were great as well, particularly in the first half when their team were on top. But second half, they didn't really have a lot to cheer about. But it was so good having fans back. It just makes such a difference. It just gives the game that extra something. And you can see it helps the players as well. It feeds through onto the pitch. And Forest now have got 2 home games, the cup game and the league game next week. So you've got to hope that being back at the City Ground can make a big difference for them. It's not an excuse by any means, but it does help. It really, really does help having a crowd behind you.
One of the points I wanted to talk about as we go through the game, Forest actually started quite brightly, but their set-piece delivery I thought was really poor. And David asks about Joe Lolly, Gary. I thought it was good that he looked physically fit, but he wasn't at it yesterday in terms of quality in the final third. What did you make of Lolly, and are you still hopeful he'll get back to the player he was?
Well, everybody would like to think so. You're right about the set pieces. They were abysmal. They were overhit, the majority of them at the far post. And then he tried to change it, and they went near post and got cut out. The problem is people now try and be too precise. You don't need to be precise. You just need to put it in an area where your teammates can attack it. You don't need to whip it in with pace. whatever, just get it away from the goalkeeper. How many times did it go into their goalkeeper's hands? And he just came out and caught it and, put them on the attack pretty quickly. Just put it in between the penalty box and the penalty spot and the 6-yard box. That gives your teammates a chance to attack it. But they didn't. I don't think they had a corner all game. I think we had 5 corners and they didn't have one. And yet those 5 corners were pretty dismal. No doubt in Joe Lolly's ability, but he's got to get back to what he was. He's got to get more consistent. And we know he can change games. I mean, that shot that hit the boy in the face, that was goal bound. It just so happened it was a decent block, a decent double block. He is capable, but the consistency levels have got to be better from everybody, not just from Joe Lolly. It's not the start anybody wanted whatsoever. It was a start, I thought, great. We're not at home, first game of the season. Pressure's off. Pressure will be on Coventry, back at their ground. And, the crowd did work for them, but you have to try and work the crowd as the opposition as well. I mean, we had 4,500 there? I mean, they were fantastic, our fans, making all that noise. And it was just that second half. You just got to go right back to last season, get in front, you try and defend a 1-goal lead against anybody, and it isn't easy because second half, they were moving the ball so quickly. Substitutions at half time, Mark Robbins were very good. They all paid off. And it was the one thing that caught my eye was the movement, and they kept trying to switch the play diagonally. And a couple went out of play, but they were doing it the right way. They were trying the right things. If you try the right things for the right intentions, it goes wrong. Just that's okay. And the players were holding their hands up and saying that. But we just sat back again, and you're thinking it's just deja vu again. And we don't want to see what happened last season. We don't want to be down there. We don't want to be struggling. We just want to be lifted. And that's got to happen pretty quickly now.
Just talk us through the goal, Gary, from a striker's point of view. And obviously, good ball from Brennan Johnson, from Mbeso, and brilliant from Johnston, and good movement from Taylor.
Yeah, it was textbook stuff, wasn't it? It's what strikers do. That's what he's there for. Neil Harris was the guest, and Glenn Murray, and both of them said, proper strikers goal. That's what we feed off. That's what we thrive on. That sort of delivery. The defender was unlucky. He tried to clear it and he stubbed his foot. But then, at that point, you think we were playing well. It was going well for us. They were under a little bit of pressure. The nerves were showing for them. But they went in. We didn't get another one. And like I say, the changes he made started to work. And, they stepped it up and they put us under pressure constantly, not, sporadically. And the more they do that to you, or they did that to us, the deeper we drop and the more difficult it is to then counter and get any sort of momentum going yourself. And it was inevitable in the end, by the look of it, that it was going to be an equaliser. And then you were desperate to say, right, let's settle for a point. But we couldn't do that. And that's the disappointing thing about those last 10 or so minutes.
If we talk about Johnson and Mighton then, Sarah, I mean, they got booted from pillar to post, which might set a trend for the season to come. They're obviously going to be targeted. How good were they? I suppose Johnson was better, wasn't he? But Mighton was good as well.
Yeah, they were both very good. It just shows when you have a bit of pace in the side what difference it can make. They were both far too quick for Coventry at times, and the only way that the opposition could stop them was to hack them down. And they both had so many fouls against them, but they made a difference. Brennan Johnson's run for that goal was just typical, really, of what he has to offer. He's just so good at driving forward and make, like Gary said, making things happen. Alex Mighton was very lively as well. He got forward when he could. He tried to create things. They show there is that youthful promise there. Mbeso as well. We mentioned him as well. Jordan Gabriel, I thought he did pretty well at right back. So Forest do have those good young players. It's getting the best out of them and making sure that you have a core around them to complement that and to put a plan in place that gets the best out of them. I mean, they're young players. They're probably going to have ups and downs throughout a season. I think there was a lot of expectation around Brennan Johnson because of what he'd done at Lincoln last year. Fans are excited to see him. There's that expectation for him to go and then show he can do it in the Championship. And he didn't look like anything fazed him. He didn't look out of place at all. We've seen a bit more of Mighton in a Forest shirt last year. He looks to have kicked on again. He can make a big difference this year. But it's getting the best out of them. It's making sure that you, like I say, put a plan in place that complements them and makes the most of what they have to offer.
Will they keep them? I mean, obviously, there's question marks over Gabriel for bringing in another right back. And like you say, I thought he did well, actually. And obviously, there's so much interest in Johnson. Do you expect one or both of those or someone like Worrell to go still? Sarah, sorry.
I think we might well do. There is still the interest there in Jordan Gabriel, particularly. Forest have already rejected bids for Brennan Johnson. I think based on that performance, he's probably added a few more figures to his price tag because he was really good. He'll have caught the eye of other clubs because of that. He's the kind of player that clubs need. Everybody wants that exciting player with a lot of promise ahead of him. He's still got his best years in the future. I'm sure there'll be other clubs starting to sniff around now. It's just whether Forest fend them off and whether they decide to keep all of them.
What would you do with the transfer situation, Gary? I mean, you could cash in on one of these young players, but if you cash in on Johnson, you're already taking out a huge chunk of your attacking threat, which, as we said, is pretty limited already, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's talk of Lewis Grabban moving, isn't there? I saw something in the paper. He's on about going to Saudi Arabia with Lamouchi. I don't know if anybody's heard that. I saw that somewhere, which quite surprised me.
Talk of Taylor going to Birmingham as well. So
right. So who we got left then? It's been a very quiet transfer window, hasn't it? Sort of thing, or transfer movement. Grealish might just trigger things. If Harry Kane goes, it might trigger things. But it's been very, very quiet. Not a lot of teams have been spending money. But the teams who have got no money, again, we spoke about this before. Coventry win, one of probably the lowest budgets in the league. Luton beat Peterborough 3-0. Magnificent season they had last season. And I looked at Coventry again. I'm thinking they've got two strikers up front here. Two players to hit, two players to have an outlet for, and it works for you. You know what Wagon's all about. We've played against Wagon many times, but the other boy who scored the goal, he was a threat as well. And you think, well, why don't we try something different at times? Because so many times last season we saw a striker isolated and, being given stick, maybe for the right reasons at some point, but for the wrong reasons at other points, because the service was never going to be easy because it has to be pinpoint accuracy all the time. If you're trying to pick a cross out and there's one player in the box, it's virtually impossible to get it right. And something has got to change. The system has got to change in some shape or form, because those stats that I mentioned that Sky put on the screen yesterday, they were horrendous in terms of your season, that you're in the bottom in every category that's important, apart from defending, obviously. And they mentioned that, we were one of the better defensively. But like I said before, defensively, if you're good, it's not going to get you promoted. It'll stop you maybe getting relegated, but you have to have positivity in that final third. And it just doesn't look positive at the moment, apart from the two young lads. And I said before, it's going to be unfair because the expectation levels will go sky high with those two lads because of what people saw. I mean, the three best players on the pitch were those two and O'Hare. And isn't it daunting that, it's O'Hare, one of our great players at Nottingham Forest. He's got the same name and he was one who went and undid us. But I don't know what the way forward is. Chris will know that. I don't know if he's got money to spend. We've got to speculate on that, whether there's anything out there for him. So the next few weeks could be very interesting.
What are you expecting, Sarah? Obviously, Zinchenko signed on the eve of the game and came on and looked a bit rusty, but it's understandable. Are you hopeful there's going to be 3 or 4 decent players coming through the door?
Yeah, they desperately need them. I don't think you could argue otherwise that they have to get signings in. Forest know that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they've taken their time over it. They're taking a long time over it, admittedly, but making sure that they get the right players in is so key. And it is a slow market. It's a really strange window. They're not the only team that have struggled to get business done at the minute. It is it is, I think, going to be one that goes right to the wire in terms of getting deals done. They need strengthening at fullback. They need a midfielder in. They need a striker in. I think they probably still need somebody who can play on the wing and in that number 10 role for different options. There is still a lot of work to be done, but the club are well aware of that. That it's not like they think that this is the squad that Chris Hughton is going to have to work with for the rest of the season. That's not the case. It's just getting these deals done. They need to get it done fairly quickly. I mean, time is already running out in August anyway, but it's a case of making sure they get the right players. And I think for me, this summer is still better than last year in the sense that it's not been panic buying yet. They've not just gone on some shopping spree and brought in players left, right and centre because they felt that they needed to. There is a bit of time being taken over it and a bit of and consideration over who they bring in. And that's when you can judge the squad, I think. Come the end of the window, that's when you have a better platform to be able to say, well, Forest have got this many strikers, they've got this many midfielders, they've got these fullbacks. The minute this isn't Chris Hughton's squad.
But could I just interject a little bit there, Sarah? Sorry to interrupt you, but last season we had that massive squad, so it wasn't the same problem. We had a lot of players. If there's any injuries, the squad was that big that people could come in. Now,
but it wasn't a good squad, though, was it? In the end, the players they brought in didn't do anything.
Yeah, but it was a big squad. You know, oh no, Garner coming in and Kravinovic. You know those.
They were in January, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying the squad was a big squad at that particular point. It's not big now. It's a very small, much smaller squad because they got rid of players. And if you get a few more injuries or whatever, and you don't bring people in, and you've just said Taylor might be off to Birmingham, Grabban might be off to Saudi Arabia, where do you go then if that happens pretty quickly? It's going to be... I would have been looking at players, about a couple of months before the season ended, you know, having a list of players thinking, right, let's go for him, or, you know, that position needs filling. Maybe it does. Maybe it's been done. Maybe people didn't want to sell the players. I don't know, because we're not privy to that information. But because of how bad it was going last season, I thought that, you know, might have been in place, the list of players a long time before the end of the season, you know, putting the feelers out. That's what usually happens. And getting the squad right for this first game of the season. And that's not happened.
I suppose the concern now is they're going to be going to clubs and they're going to look a little bit desperate, aren't they? The clubs know that Forest need players. Agents are going to be asking for God knows what money. Clubs are going to be asking for the same. They're battling for James Garner against Sheffield United, Stoke and everyone else. It's a bit, does it, even now at this stage of the season, does it feel like it's on a bit of a knife edge, Sarah, or am I getting ahead of myself there?
I don't think so at the minute. I still think come the end of the window, they'll manage to they'll get some signings in. They will have a better squad than they've got now. It's just who and how many and what that strength in depth looks like come the end of August and the options that Chris Hughton has. I still don't think it's not a great situation, but I still don't think there's any need to panic over the lack of signings just yet. Ideally you want them in. Ideally you want them in at the start of pre-season. The manager wants to work them throughout the summer. He said that. He's frustrated that it is taking time. But the flip side of that is if you go on like they did last season and just bring players in and they prove not to be the right players, for me it's better to take time over it and make sure that you get the deals done that you want.
I wanted to talk about the second half and I've written down game management here. It's a real football term. I suppose the crux of the issue for me is where does the balance lie between COVID really messing up pre-season, which led to the players tiring, and whether the manager is too cautious with substitutions and getting players on earlier and too cautious tactically. Garry, how much of the finger is pointed at Forest and the manager and how much is down to circumstance that did mess things up a bit going into the game because they had 2 friendlies cancelled on the eve of the season?
Well, the manager will always get the stick, won't he? Because he picks the team, he brings the players in, and that's what managers know and they accept it. It's part of football, it always has been. But we've never encountered anything like this before with COVID. It's totally nonplussed everybody. It's been going on 2 years, and it's been very difficult for everybody, for every football club, financially, players getting COVID, picking COVID up. Then I'll compare that to the Olympics. The Olympics took 2 weeks, and there were very few people who got COVID in there. A couple before start of the games couldn't do it, but those athletes went right the way through it, and it was a fantastic, 2 weeks of athletics and sport. So to blame COVID, on a build-up, I think maybe got to be wrong. If you get it, then yeah, understandable. You have to do the right things, but then there should be the players around to come in and be able to fill those holes. It's just more or less saying, well, we've had 4 injuries. You can still get the whole squad training outside. I don't know the full circumstances. None of us do about the COVID situation, how long it lasted, how many were there. But I don't know whether to blame that is just hiding behind the loss. I'm not sure, because nobody's privy to what goes on there. Because you don't get that information out of football clubs anymore. You used to hear whispers. People used to tell you what was going on, but we know what football is now. Very little comes out any football club unless they need it to come out. COVID has been massively difficult. I know that for personally over the past couple of years, with my situation. With not being able to have carers in for my wife and everything. I was a sole carer and all that sort of thing. So I know exactly, how difficult it is and how it does affect everybody. But you've got to say, right, okay, that first game's out the way now. Let's not say anything about COVID. Let's just go out and play football. Let's be positive. We've been desperate to get back into this situation of live crowds coming back in. I was at Mansfield, as I said, and there were over 6,000 there. Bristol Rovers sold out their end, and the atmosphere was fantastic. The smiles on everybody's faces was brilliant, and it made such a difference. I was sat there, and the atmosphere around was just incredibly good. So let's just hope that continues. And Sarah said about the game on Saturday, home games at the City Ground are so loud, so vociferous, and it's bouncing there, and we need those fans, and they will be there, and they'll try everything they possibly can to lift us. And we need lifting after the first game, because we look at the fixtures coming up, and they're tough. They're all going to be tough because, as I said, the teams that have come down from the Premier League, Sheffield United lost to Birmingham. Nobody saw that coming. That was a coupon buster, and nobody probably saw Forest getting beat by Coventry. It's going to be one. It's always tough in the Championship, but this season again looks particularly difficult.
Myself, sorry. I suppose the big thing reading online after the game is around positivity, like Gary mentioned, Sarah. Is that stick or twist thing? A bit like the Euros final. When you're 1-0 up, do you go for the second goal? And Chris Hughton's nature always seems to be not to really gamble and go for the second. And I wonder whether they should have done, because they probably suspect in the back of their mind they might flag in the last 20 minutes after the events building up to the game. Is that fair that fans would like to see a bit more positivity, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Every fan wants to see their team attacking, don't they? Nobody particularly likes to see your team sit back and try and defend a 1-0 lead. It's not really what you go to football matches for. Everybody wants to see exciting, entertaining football. I think, in hindsight, I'm sure Forest will sit there and say, yeah, we should have gone for that second goal. It's something really that they should have learned from last season. We did see it a lot. It's not like it's a new problem that's cropped up on the opening day. I think Chris Hughton said in his press conference afterwards that they were tired. You could see that they couldn't live with the kind of tempo that Coventry had in those closing stages. But at that point, you need to make good decisions, and he felt that Forest didn't. If you're kind of relying on that, then you need to give yourself more of a cushion. If you're only 1-0 up and the other team's starting to get a grip on the game, as Coventry did fairly early in the second half, you're inviting trouble. You're giving yourself, there's questions there to be answered, and you're not helping yourself in that sense. Forest needed to push on. They needed to kill the game off, like we've said, and the fans started to get behind Coventry. That didn't help. It just, they didn't put themselves in the best situation, I think, going into that second half. They needed to do more, and yeah, then you're relying on your fitness, and obviously their levels at the minute aren't quite where they'd like them to be. It's all easy in hindsight, I suppose, but yeah, I don't think they approached that second half in the right way.
It's the first game of the season. If we're talking 20 games in, I could understand fitness levels and things like that, but preparation is paramount before the season. When I finished this season, I would have a 2-week break, and then I would start training myself again. I would start ticking over and, upping it until the first day of pre-season training, so I could go back in there, and I was absolutely hitting the floor running. And I love running. I love training, and I was so professional in the way I went about it because I wanted to be the best shape I could possibly be in. Because I think 136 games in 2 seasons. So when you play that many games, you have to be fit, and that was my reason, all the time for preparing myself. Fail to prepare to fail. The adage that always jumps out at you. So I think blaming tiredness on the first game of the season for me just doesn't wash. There are other teams who've, I'm sure, had COVID problems as well. I know teams have, and I know I speak to Nigel about some of the problems he's had, and you just get on with it. You don't blame it. You don't, say, well, we were tired at the end, we were flagging. That really tells people, well, hold on a minute, it's only the first game of the season. You've got a big squad. Even if your better players are out, which some of them were, the ones who have got to come in have got to be fit. They're not all not fit. They're not all had COVID. So the ones that come in, how can you use that as an excuse? It's baffling a little bit to me. Yeah, COVID it hits people in different ways at different ages. Of course it does. But, a lot of other clubs I've been told have had problems with COVID, and unfortunately you just have to get on with it. There's nothing else you can do. And if you start blaming it and blaming the tiredness and bringing that into it, then people start questioning it a little bit. I'm as desperate as anybody. I'm so desperate for that football club, I was lucky enough to play for, to be successful. I really am. I'm desperate for Chris to be successful. He's a cracking bloke. I played against him many years ago. Terrific player. And, you just want one of our managers that we've had over the past, I don't know how many we've had. You want one of them to succeed, and everybody wants Chris to succeed. But to succeed, maybe you've got to bring the right players in. You've got to change your system. I said earlier, I don't think this is again, disrespect to Coventry. Against Coventry, playing Colback and Yates, I think Coventry, when they saw the team sheet, would have quite enjoyed that. Because of O'Hare, the way he plays, he'll test people and he'll put you on the back foot. And it's difficult when you're on the back foot then to get on the front foot and start doing what you want to do. And after the first goal, first off, no problems at all. But that is a time when you've got the team under the cosh a little bit. Right, we're going to get that second. And if we'd have got that second, no way they'd come back into the game. Not a chance. Guarantee it. But the longer the game went on, you've got to give Mark Robbins great credit. He changed things at half time. How often do you see managers go by the textbook and do it on the hour? He didn't. He saw something he thought he could change by the players he could put on. And it changed the second half. So, don't always go to the hour mark, say, right, substitutes now. If it's wrong, do it when you think it's wrong, even if it's in the first 35 minutes of a game. Have the, foresight to do that. And once they got on the front foot and, started putting pressure on, we found it difficult to get out our own half a little bit. And when we did, Taylor was isolated, as we've seen, last season. That's why we only scored 37 goals. And all those facts that Sky did put out on the screen, that's why those facts were there, and they were right, because, we're not good in that final third. We don't get enough action in that penalty box. We don't create enough chances. And if that goes on again this season, how many seasons on the trot can you do it and get away with it? That's my worry.
You suppose, Sarah, the manager looks around at his bench and doesn't really fancy it. I mean, he had to bring Figueiredo on who I don't think could be fully fit. He's missed most of pre-season through injury, so he does have an excuse. I think Figueiredo does there. He didn't play as well as Mbe, so he didn't bring Carvalho on. And it can sort of understand that. I mean, you wonder whether he should go for the second goal and get him on. But do you think he thinks, hang on a minute, I really need some signings here? And he's shown that with the way he's gone about his substitutions.
Yeah, he didn't really have too many options. Once you'd brought Zinchenko on, Carvalho really was the only other kind of attacking option. You've got a few younger players on there.
Yeah,
there wasn't really any.
Cafu came on and played as a striker, didn't he? Really?
Yeah. But other than that, there was nobody there. Obviously, without grabbing and having to start Lyle Taylor, you've got no other striker option. Nuno da Costa's still injured. I'm not sure that he would have been first choice to come on anyway and make a difference. But there's no real options there. That's where he's struggling. I thought Zinchenko actually did okay when he came on. He can take a good corner, which is something.
Yeah, that's true. He did take a good corner.
Yeah, hopefully he can continue that. And hopefully he can come in and make a difference once he gets a bit more settled in and gets more game time. I think, like you say, he did look a little bit rusty, but with time, I think he can be a good signing. But you need more of them. You need more players because the options aren't there. And you could see that when Chris Hughton looked at his bench. I'm not sure what else really he could have done to try and change things.
You want to come in, Garry?
It's not. You can talk about the game yesterday, but we've already spoken about it. It was exactly the same last season, and we had a bigger squad last season. It was get a goal in front and try and hang on. It was never right. Let's go and win this game 3-0. And that's you've got to have that winning mentality, because in today's climate, the fitness levels of teams now is so high that if you just sit back a little bit and try and nullify it, they've got enough about them to go and get back in the game. So why not just say, right, 35 minutes, we're 1-0 up. Right, okay, let's not sit back. Let's just, if we're tired, if we have got the excuse of being tired and COVID, right, let's go for that second goal as much as we can. And if we get the second goal, then we can try and, game manage it and try and win the game, because it was very unlikely that they would have won the game had we got that second goal. But I don't think we did that after the first goal. It was, like you said, Sarah, last season, same old, watching the same sort of procedure and it failing again and getting beat late on. How many games last season did we get beat late on? You've got to learn your lessons from those situations. I mean, can you remember how many games we actually lost in the last 10, 15 minutes last season? Quite a few, weren't there?
Yeah.
So you've got to learn those lessons no matter how fitness levels are. It's the first game or the 20th game. You have to say, right, okay, 1-0 up. Let's go and finish this off if we can. Let's put all the pressure on. Put Mighton alongside Taylor. Just go and do that. If you lose the game, fine. You're losing it positively. But losing it in that way again, it's just, it just rankles with you a little bit.
So they've got Bradford in the Carabao Cup this week, Garry. I mean, a win breeds confidence. So would you go strong and try and win the game? And the manager says about players need match fitness. So you could argue they play and they get more match fitness. Or do you give youngsters a go and have a look at them and see if there's someone who can emerge from the pack and make a difference?
This game on Tuesday now, for me, doesn't matter a jot because it's the game Saturday matters more than anything now. Because you can't, if you lose a game on Saturday, you're then behind the 8 ball straight away, and your confidence levels are rock bottom early in the season. So I would, again, we don't know what the procedure is within the squad at the moment, who's fit, who's not, who's had COVID, who's not, and how it's affected everybody. Chris will know that, and hopefully he'll see the game as he has to see it. He'll have to pick a team he thinks. If he needs players to get fitness levels up, then play those players against Bradford, but prepare totally for Saturday. Yeah, we all like to see a cup run, but the league is so much more important. Prepare for Saturday, get that right, get that squad as fit as you can for Saturday, and then, take it from there, because you have to get something out of that game. A point will do Saturday. But that's the priority for me now. Yeah, it's a good game to have. It's good that Chris can bring players in, have a look at players that might, jump at the chance of playing next Saturday. So it's important in that respect, but in no other respect at all.
There's two other points I want to talk about before we go. Firstly, Sarah, would Forest have lost that game with Worrell on the pitch, do you think? There were some not tired minds, there were some poor decisions at the end of the game in terms of seeing a game out with a leader like Worrell. Would they have maybe got over the line, do you think? What difference did it make not having him?
Yeah, I think he would have helped. I mean, he's a presence more than anything, isn't he? It's like you say, he's a leader, and he does help settle things down in the back line when Coventry was starting to get on top and starting to run Forest ragged a little bit. You have the impression that Joe Worrell wouldn't allow that. He'd try and stamp that out. He does make a big difference. Whether he would have changed the result or not, I don't know. I think it would be more down to Forest needing to get a second goal rather than anything. But he would have helped. Absolutely. He does make a big difference, and you have to hope that he's not out for long because he's a huge player. He really, really is.
Yeah, I think the thing about the two goals, there was a bit of misfortune in the bouncers and the ricochets, but you have to capitalise on those ricochets if you're in that position, and Coventry did that. But was it the second goal when O'Hare was right out near the byline or the touch line, and there's Bong and somebody else, I can't remember who it was, and he's gone past two of them like they weren't there. That is not acceptable. Keep him out there. Don't let him just do his tricks. Face him away from where he's being dangerous. But he didn't. He turned. Yeah, he got a bit of luck, but he got a bit of luck because he deserved a bit of luck because he was positive. He wanted to make something happen. He did make something happen. His cross wasn't the best. Should have played it a little bit earlier, but he got the luck he deserved because of what he did previous. He got the ricochet. The boy drove it in the net. And then, like I say, I've already said about the second goal, the lack of reaction from defenders, and there were a lot of defenders and red shirts around it after Samba had made the save. It wasn't good enough. You cannot do that at any level. You have to react. You have to respond. You have to expect the unexpected. And we didn't do that. And that's why we lost the game.
Yeah, Sarah, Sky were quite critical of Samba for the second goal. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it back or not. I didn't think it was his fault particularly, but do you see? Well, what do you make of Samba's performance? I thought he was okay, to be fair.
Yeah, I thought other than the goals he conceded, he didn't really have too much to do. He didn't have too many saves to make. I don't think he was particularly at fault for that one. I wouldn't put it down to him. Maybe he might think he could have done better himself, but I don't think that was his problem. I still think in the cup game we might see Ethan Horvath. I'm sure that Chris Hughton will want to have a look at him because he hasn't played yet. He didn't get his opportunity in pre-season with the two friendlies that were cancelled. So I'm sure, or I expect that he'll get a run out, and it'd be interesting to see how he does because he's been brought in as competition to push Brice Samba. It's Brice Samba's shirt to lose. He's number one, or he's not wearing the number one shirt, but he's the first choice. He's established himself over the last two seasons. But if you've got somebody who comes in and does well, all of a sudden then that's putting pressure on him. And I think that's what he probably needs. If you've got somebody else in your position that's doing well, that helps you step up. If you're looking at over your shoulder thinking, well, this guy's come in and he's doing all right, I've got to up my game. That might help him. He's not really had too much competition in the time that he's been at Forest in that sense. So it'll be interesting to see if Horvath does play, how he does.
Yeah, that's why I asked about Samba, because there's a scenario, isn't there, where rather like Samba took Murich's shirt, Horvath comes in and takes Samba's shirt, potentially, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a big call when you change your goalkeeper. I don't think managers like to do that during the season because it's a different position, and you ideally want your defence to know who's behind them and to get used to playing together. And it's a big decision to make. But if you're trying to win games, you go with your best team, you go with your best players. And if it proves that Horvath is better than Samba, then I don't think Chris Hughton will have any hesitation in swapping his keeper.
But again, how anybody can blame him for that second goal, I don't know. you know, because his save initially was absolutely superb. It was reaction. He had to get down low. He's palmed it away. And like I said, no reaction from defenders. Then it came again. Another no reaction. I was watching the European Cup final again. It was on one of the stations the other night, and against Hamburg. We got battered, absolutely battered by Hamburg in that final, Kevin Keegan and everybody. And I watched defensively how well we did in that game to win that game, because they were so much on top of us. And the goalmouth action was there when Shilton saved it, and when the ball was, you know, bouncing around. The reaction of those defenders and the concentration levels of those defenders was just incredible. You know, they could have scored 3 or 4, and they would have done without those concentration levels. And people say, well, yeah, that was a different level. But it doesn't matter about different levels. No matter what level you're at, you have to be responsible in your particular areas. You have to switch on all the time, no matter whether you're mentally tired or not. And at that particular point, the games we played over the 2 seasons, we were mentally and physically absolutely out the ball game. But still, those concentration levels were there. And on Sunday, yesterday, the lack of reaction to those saves was just non-existent. You know, it was made easy for both goals because of lack of thinking, right, that might bounce to him here. I'm going to block this. I'm going to throw myself at this. There's no throwing themselves at it. And I have to blame defenders for that a little bit more than the goalkeeper.
Sarah or Gary, finish off by giving us some reason for optimism. It's been very doom and gloom. Give me one positive from the game, Sarah.
Brennan Johnson, he was brilliant, and Alex Mighton. And the other thing is, it's only the first game. I know it feels like it's a continuation of last season, but it's still only one game, and there is still a long way to go in the transfer window. Forest will make signings. They will have a better squad come the end of August, and they've got to hope then that translates onto the pitch.
Yes, I hope you're right. They certainly need some players in if they're going to step up from where they were yesterday. But I thought Johnson and Mighton were certainly excellent. Right, Gary, do you have anything else you want to say before I bring us to a halt?
Unless you've got anything you want me to say, no.
No,
I mean, look, it is the first game of the season. It's easy to be critical, but that's what we're here to, we can't just sit here and say, well, yeah, that was all right. That was. If you see that something's wrong, you have to say it. No matter how much you might get pilloried for it, or, the club might think, oh, crikey, what's he saying? You do it because you care. It's not being critical for critical reasons at all. It's because you care so much about the football club. And I just want to see positivity. And the one factor for me, the one plus point, is it's early in the season. We've got time to put it right. And we've got a game on Tuesday. I'm going to the game on Tuesday, so I'm really looking forward to that. So I can have a look and see what, is changed from yesterday. And then the preparation is paramount for the weekend. Absolutely paramount. And, if we can win that game at the weekend and get something tomorrow, then the mood changes. If you lose tomorrow and you lose on Saturday, the mood's going to be absolutely rock bottom. And that's the one thing you want to avoid more than anything else. You need to keep that smile on players' faces. You need to keep that, confidence level right up. And I'm sure Chris is trying to do that this week. That's what he'll be trying to do, lifting people, getting people a little bit fitter. And let's just hope we can move forward, because we have to.
Exactly. Gary, it's good to have you back on form, unlike Forest, first straight away in the first game of the season. And happy birthday for recently as well.
Oh, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, got me bus pass. Got me bus pass coming now.
Good. Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Sarah, you're going to have to host this next week, I think, aren't you? I'm not around.
I shall try and follow in your illustrious footsteps.
I'm away.
Are you at kids club?
I'm at kids club. No, I am the kids club, looking after my kids.
How professional is that? The season starts and you're away.
I've got to go away sometimes. Bloody summer holiday, 6 weeks long, guys. There's 6 weeks. There's 6 weeks of school. When we were at school, it felt like it was too short. Now it feels like it's never ending. Trying to put kids somewhere.
You enjoy yourself anyway, Matt. I'm sure Sarah will just look after the programme particularly well.
Yes, yeah, not too well, Sarah. Thanks for everyone who's watched along and listened along as normal and dropped comments in, and do give us a good review, as I always say, because it does help to get the word out there and get people listening to the podcast. And we, but not me, will see you next week. Thanks very much, everyone.